All right, very good. Well, thank you, and good morning again, everybody. Got people coming in, just letting them in here through the lobby. So, so today's session is a little bit of a follow-on to yesterday, but meant to be a bit more sort of technical in nature. And by that I mean, yesterday we went through and we did the functional sort of side of the demonstration, right? Walking through the sort of user side, how they would receive calls, how they would receive live chats, how they would work those through, view eligibility within the application. They would have the access to the patient information from sort of within Dynamics 365, as also the ability to sort of pop that out and run that standalone. And again, many of these are sort of design decisions we made just based on what we know, or even some of the limitations that we had within sort of the demo environment. And knowing we only had an hour, we've been doing this long enough to know that if we try to cover functional stuff and technical stuff in the same call, we never get to it all, and we end up being a little too rushed. So we wanted to put this second call on the calendar today, where we can sort of now extend off of the functional demonstration and get into some of the more technical details, because I think it's important, if you all are making a decision as to moving forward with a solution, that you don't just only see the pretty side, but you also get to understand that there's some complexities here. But because we've been down this road with many of these complexities within the VA before, that helps you keep your risk at a minimum in terms of moving forward, getting something implemented on a particular timeline.
Understand and appreciate that. One other question for you before we go into a dive today.
Sure.
So there is the possibility that VetHome could expand from our current staff volume of 70 employees to something like 350.
Okay.
Any difficulties with economies of scale or anything like that?
No, not at all. I think I've mentioned we have 20 or so Dynamics applications across the VA. In fact, I happen to have this slide right here. So, many of the, I'm not sharing, am I? I have it up on my screen, but I'm not sharing. And not to just jump in, but this helps with answering the question. We have a large sort of portfolio of applications built on the Dynamics platform. I think some of these applications are over the 30,000 user level. So from a scalability, security,
350 shouldn't be a problem.
I think we're going to be okay.
Okay.
But it's a good
Thank you.
question, and probably important to mention, right? So as we get more technical, right, this is a SaaS solution, so software as a service. It's delivered to the VA via a SaaS connection, and basically as part of your enterprise agreement terms, and this is true for both Office 365 as well as Dynamics 365 and any of the SaaS solutions that Microsoft provides to our customers in the VA. You receive a 99.9% uptime guarantee with your solution. So whether you're one user or you're 10,000 users, that uptime guarantee and scalability is baked into the service.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so let me just kind of do a flyby introduction. I have a number of different people on this call today that were not on the call yesterday. All of the folks on the call are people that are very intimately familiar with the VA, have been involved with many implementations of Dynamics going back over a decade. So I'm just going to have them do a couple of quick introductions, because I think the best way we'll do this is I'm going to quarterback this, but I'm going to be throwing passes out to these guys as the questions come up. So let's go ahead and have Aaron Barth, if you can go ahead and start on our side with a quick introduction and background. You're on mute, Aaron.
Oh, sorry about that. Hey, guys. My name is Aaron Barth. I'm a chief architect for federal app innovation, but I've been working with the VA for about 5 years in the app dev space. I've been, worked with VEIS and other services in both a sort of supporting and also an architecture capacity. So happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Great, thank you. Brad Linscott. Just working my way down the list here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Linscott. I'm one of the dedicated support engineers that I working at the VA. My swim lane is similar to Aaron's. It's in the app dev space. And most of my day is spent working with VEIS to make sure it's running smoothly. Things are up to date. If there are any performance or stability problems, I investigate those and work with the folks at the VA to find root cause and then a resolution and put it back into play.
Great. Next on the list is Brad, who you know well from yesterday. So in the interest of time, we'll jump down to Jack Bates.
Yeah, Jack Bates, a digital advisor at Microsoft, and I retired from the VA after 33 years. I started the corporate data warehouse and was deeply involved in Cerner data integration the last 3 years at the VA. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Layla? And if you're not available, Lena, you would be next.
Hey, sorry, I'm trying to juggle between two calls.
I figured.
Everyone, I am a pursuit lead, and I just kind of oversee the pre-sales process on our opportunities with the VA.
Excellent, thank you. Lena?
Hi, I'm Lena Maternus. I'm part of our account team working closely with Brian across our suite of applications at the VA.
Last but not least, Rich Carr.
Yes, good morning. My name is Rich Carr, and I'm a principal consultant with Microsoft. I've been at the VA account for 11 or 12 years now, and have had my hands in pretty much all the applications you see on the screen, and been a great deal involved in our integration platform and strategy over the years.
And sorry, I just had to expand some more of the contacts, so I was missing Scott Orr.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Orr. Been at the VA coming up on 9 years as a solution architect.
Thank you. And Steve McVeigh.
Hi, so my name's Steve McVeigh. I'm a delivery architect as well with Rich at the VA. So I've been here 9 years and worked with, again, most of all the apps on the screen, as well as the move from on-prem to online SaaS. And now I'm supporting most of the Power Platform.
Excellent. And we will probably at some point get Dr. Michael Yuhara, who's our sort of digital clinician health lead across our federal health practice. So you said he may be a little bit late. Okay, so I know that's a lot of names. There's not going to be a test or a quiz, but wanted to at least give you the sense that we have a lot of expertise and VA experience here on the call today. And then Dr. Moore, I don't know if it makes sense to do introductions down along your side, but I think the one thing the team would be interested in is a sense for how technical is the team that is being represented here, so that we understand kind of the level that we need to be at. Do we need to be at a 200 level, a 300 level, a 400 level, so that we're not over the heads of folks, but we're giving you enough that is helpful?
Good question. Is anybody on the team a programmer? No.
Mhm.
I would say that several members of the team, including myself, are fairly technophilic. And what I would say is go ahead and present to non-programmer but tech savvy individuals.
Okay.
And if we need you to dumb it down, I'm not shy about saying I don't understand. So does that work?
That does. That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, let's start to talk about this this platform, right? Because we're talking about Dynamics 365, and out of the box, it gives you this customer service application. But and you saw much of that at work yesterday. But obviously, we did quite a bit of customization to that to fit it to some of the requirements we were working toward, and that's a really, really important part of the platform, the flexibility of it to do that. And frankly, that's why it's been implemented, so, pretty heavily across the VA, is because all of these individual groups have their own very specific requirements. Even from contact center to contact center, the data, the screens, the flow, the process is quite different. So, and that flexibility of the underlying CRM platform is really what provides that flexibility. So let's talk a little about that platform and what we mean by that. So when you're talking about a cloud product from Microsoft, whether it's Office 365 or Dynamics 365 or Power BI, et cetera, it all starts with Microsoft Azure. And so while VA also runs Azure for its own use, right, infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, we're talking about Microsoft Azure running in the Microsoft data centers and basically acting as the cloud backbone, right? And we are one of the top cloud providers, in the world, and Azure is the backbone of that. We spend over $1 billion a month in the building, maintaining, and growing of the Azure platform. Oops, one direction. And then on top of that platform is many of our SaaS solutions. So it makes sense to start to talk about what's known as the Power Platform, and specifically the tool called Power Automate, because Power Automate is the workflow engine that runs across this backbone. So you can build workflow activities via, again, low code, no code, point and click. So you're going to hear me talk about this low code, no code thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that term yet. It's sort of a Gartner industry term where we're building enterprise components and functions and applications, but not having to write millions of lines of code to do it. So Power Automate, being able to build workflows. Power Apps, being able to build applications, right? So think of this as sort of a Lego kit of components, which you can sort of snap together applications, whether it's the dashboards, the reports, the business rules, the performance components, the workflow embedded in the application, as well as all of the compliance and scalability and everything that you need to do in building applications. Again, low code, no code. And the types of applications.
Would that be comparable to like plug and play?
Not
really.
Not necessarily plug and play. If you're thinking of words like that, probably the most commonly used would be drop and drag, right? So I want to build an application. I can kind of start with a blank screen and I drag on a label, I drag on a text box, I drag on radio buttons, right? And in doing so, and we've been doing that for 40 years, but what really makes it low code, no code is when you drag that field over that says I'm going to capture a first name, for example. In just dragging that over, it builds all the backend database requirements in order to support that field without you having to do that, right? Okay. That's sort of the magic of low code, no code at the end of the day is, you not only build the UI design, but in doing so, you build all the plumbing at the same time for the back to support it. And so, if you think about the types of applications that you can build with Power Apps, it really runs the gamut. I mean, really any type of application that's sort of tracking in nature, right? I need to collect data, I need to process data, I need to report on data. That's essentially what you can build with Power Apps. Then in doing so, and this came up yesterday, and I think you actually put in the comment, Dr. Moore, about the gratitude application. So
yes, I've used that many times.
Yeah, so gratitude is yet another little example you could plug in here. I guess you could call it an HR app, right? If you were trying to put it into a category on here, and it's an example of a lightweight Power App. One person built that from within HR. She's not overly technical. She used drop and drag approaches to build this application. It actually got quite complex because it needed to deal with a lot of business rules as it grew. But it's a really great example of sort of low code, no code development using Power Apps. And the other thing, and gratitude is no exception to that, which is a huge benefit of Power Apps, is it's very tightly integrated and frankly, a cousin, if you will, of Office 365. And so just like with gratitude, when you fill out and you submit your gratitude, it sends you emails and things. Well, it's hooked right into Exchange to do that. No coding, it's just already integrated. And there's touch points across all over Office in many of these Power Apps. You can report using Power BI because the data is generally stored in data sources that Power BI works with, whether it be SharePoint lists, Microsoft Dataverse, which we'll be talking about a lot today, which is a relational backend in our SaaS cloud. You can add those Power Virtual Agents. So we saw that in the demo yesterday. There was a voice Power Virtual Agent as well as a bot agent within the live chat. VA's already live with a outward-facing Power Virtual Agent right now that can answer frequently asked question type things for any veteran coming to va.gov. The other side of it, which we keep coming back to as well, is data connections, right? So yes, we have data within our application, but we also need to go get data, bring data in, push data out, and we streamline that process through data connectors. So, and connectors fall into a couple different categories. There's standard data connectors, which is mostly your sort of office stuff, but there's other things thrown in there. As you can see, there's Twilio and for texting and Slack and Twitter if you're doing social media type stuff. But then there's these premium connectors as well, which get into more sort of enterprise components. There's your Dataverse connector we just mentioned, but SQL and Oracle and SAP and Salesforce and ServiceNow, these are out-of-the-box connectors that allow the platform to easily connect to outside sources in a streamlined, repeatable way.
I'm assuming those premium and custom connectors would be used for, say, Euler or VERP or
Right.
some of the APIs that we would be looking at for our program specs.
You're exactly right. And in fact, if you look at
Okay.
these 4 white ones down here at the bottom, those
Yep,
represent
VA.
custom connectors, right? And those
Okay.
are exactly. So, you know, they're at the end of the day, you know, to get a little technical, they're wrappers, right? So if you have an API, it provides a wrapper around an API and streamlines the ability for that programmer to essentially work with that API from within the platform.
Okay.
Okay, and the last part you might be saying, well, okay, this is great. This is a whole lot about Power Platform, but in the demo yesterday, all I heard was Dynamics, Dynamics, Dynamics. Well, Dynamics 365 is a suite of applications that come pre-built out of the box to align to a particular set of workloads or use case scenarios. So basically, instead of building a from scratch Power app that does customer service and contact center functions, you buy a Dynamics 365 application license, which is a pre-built app ready to go around that case. But as you need to, again, customize and configure it, you have the whole Power Platform capabilities to do that customization. So in other words, if you were to look at it in a different view of what we're really talking about, you have that underlying Azure platform, you have Power Automate across the whole platform and the ability to connect those workflows out into other systems. And then you have these different tools, Power Apps, and they come in basically 2 flavors, Power Apps, Canvas and Model. Then you have Power BI, then you have the virtual agents that we talked about. So all you want to do here is think about Dynamics 365 as a set of pre-built Power Apps that are in this model category. If you remember from the demo,
between the Canvas and Model?
Great question. So a Canvas app, so Gratitude is a Canvas app. It is built as a lightweight, application that can have any type of backend to it. It could literally have Excel as a backend, but all the way up to SQL Server and Oracle. So it has a lot more flexibility that way. And it doesn't have a sort of pre-built data model. In other words, when you do a model-driven app, you define the data model in a database, and the user experience is ultimately generated from that. When you build a Canvas app, you start with a blank canvas, you build your experience, and then you connect it to the back end. And so where this comes into play on the demonstration yesterday is what we did was we used Dynamics 365. So ultimately we used a model-driven app because we used Dynamics 365. And when it came to the integration with Vista and Cerner, we did that with a Canvas app that we embedded into the model-driven app. And that's one option. We're going to show you that you can do everything in model driven if you would like. But we did that because it gives you then the ability to pop out that app and run it standalone for, say, the clinicians, right?
Okay.
So that was the reason we chose to do that. But we actually have examples today here in our presentation where you could do it either way. In fact,
Okay.
now that I mention it, in the demonstration when Brad was going through, when we were on the summary conversation, all that Vista data, CPRS data was in the model driven, right, in Dynamics. But when we flipped over to a different tab, we loaded the Canvas app. Okay, so now that you sort of understand that from a platform and an app perspective, another thing I mentioned yesterday, which we can revisit. is that on this platform, we have Dynamics 365 customer service, and then we can optionally turn on the additional channels, these communication channels that are part of omni-channel. So again, if you just want to take in phone calls, you can use Dynamics 365 customer service, and that's really, we don't need omni-channel in that case because technically you're using Cisco as your voice channel, right? But if you want to turn on the live chat or any of the other sort of components that allow for multi-channel communication, then you would add on the omni-channel piece. And more specifically, Dr. Moore, that means you're giving a license for Dynamics 365 to the user who's using Dynamics, and then you're giving an additional add-on license to the same user who also needs omni-channel. You could have a mix of users that don't all need omni-channel, right? Maybe only your coordinators need omni-channel, but your physicians, your reporting, your other, sort of related users don't need the omni-channel component, right? So,
what is the annual cost for an omni-channel license?
So we just had a new contract switch in April, so I haven't committed these to memory yet. But I think I will get it by the end of the call. When another person is speaking, I'll go back behind and I'll pull the costs for you.
Okay.
Just don't have
Thank
them
you.
in quite yet. Yep.
It's the reason why I'm asking is that again, there's the possibility of VetHome dramatically expanding, and we're submitting
Sure.
Budget requests for the PACT Act. So that would be very helpful information to know.
Okay, so what I could do is just put together a little table for you, like a little ROM on the software side, which will be quite accurate because I'm going to use VA contract pricing. And I'm sorry, now I'm going to jot it down this time. You said the user count
annual user fee or user license for omni-channel. Because I think omni-channel is going to be mandatory. The live, again, confirming that the live chat feature allows veterans to securely upload protected health information. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. We need that.
Okay. The user count footprint that you mentioned earlier, I didn't jot down. You said you were originally thinking of a certain number of users, but you could expand to another. What were those numbers again?
Currently, we are allocated for 70 staff, 40 clinicians and 30 coordinators, admin. That number could potentially increase to 340 total with 270 clinicians and 70 coordinators and admin staff.
Would that happen within the first year potentially, or?
Potentially between 20, it would be completed by the end of 2024.
Okay, got it.
So like 2/3 of the increase would be in 2023 and the other third in 2024.
Thank you.
Tentative.
Okay, I'll put together again a little licensing table for you on that. And the other thing I should probably mention is while many of these folks here on the call are here to help with sort of technical questions, many of them are part of our delivery team. So if you need to sort of quickly get to a rough order of magnitude of what it would cost to implement this as well, we're in many ways starting that process, right? We're going to answer a lot of the types of questions that they would need to ask of you through this, next 40 minutes to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Let's go ahead and now that we have that, let's go ahead and jump down to a little bit about the demonstration yesterday and what we mean by low code, no code. So, you may recognize this screen yesterday where we had Ted Bailey's record and this was, the veteran record, which allowed us to have sort of various different tabs of data. So, just to sort of reorient you here, right? Because we're using the contact center sort of setup for Dynamics, we can support multi-sessions. So this is we're talking with Ted Bailey. If we were also to start a conversation with Abby and have more than one session open, we can do that. It supports multi-session. So the user can jump from, each of their sessions. The VA call centers today don't do a whole lot of that. They really just like the agent focused on one customer at a time, but we do support that. And then as you're in Ted Bailey, you can open up various different tabs across the top that are all relative to supporting Ted Bailey, right? So if I open knowledge articles or I open other things, they will just continue to open across these tabs. But right now I'm on the tab for his, veteran or contact record. Within this record, I have multiple tabs that get me to information related to him. Again, this is all what we built in configuration and of the experience to fit the requirements. We showed how you could have, the patient information. It's not showing here on this particular one, but we had the MVI section yesterday, right? The Master Veteran Index, which I think is being sort of rebranded or named to the MPI, the Master Person Index, which you didn't call out as one of your integrations, but in our experience, just about every application needs to integrate with that, because if you have Ted Bailey coming in, you have to validate that you're really talking to Ted Bailey, right?
Correct.
And so you're going to call, all of our applications make a call into MVI based on an identifier that Ted provides, does an address validation, does a, last four social number type of validation so that the person can validate. So is it safe to assume you would also need that? You would need MVI
Yes.
integration? Okay.
Question though.
Sure.
So MVI, will it only pull veterans who are enrolled with the VA for healthcare, or will it pull any veteran who has served from like a master repository?
It's a master repository of any veteran. If anyone from the team wants to chime in on that, please feel free. I know just all of you are familiar with MVI.
I think it is for those that have enrolled, because it does a cross check of care and within the VA, and then creates that EPI number.
Okay. So question then, VetHome will be fielding a lot of calls from veterans who are not enrolled in VA healthcare. They are not in the VA system. This, in many cases, would be their first encounter. What shows up if a veteran is not in MVI? What would the agent see?
My guess is there that if you're receiving a call and they are a contact that is not an MVI, they're essentially not known by the VA, you would then go ahead and create a new contact record for them. That contact would live in your CRM. And then later, if they did become someone that was enrolled and in MVI, we would have to sort of connect those records together. So
does MVI pull anything from DoD?
It sounds like from Jack's answer, no. It sounds like it's essentially your master list of veterans who are registered for VA benefits. Anybody else have info on that? Or Jack?
So one thing we can do too, we can check. There is with the Cerner project. There is some joint identity work going on. So maybe we could tap into that. We'll check that.
That would be, I don't know if a DoD option is possible, but whatever options there would be to populate with veterans who are not enrolled in the VA would be tremendously valuable. Because indeed, one of the main objectives for VetHome, besides serving veterans with military environmental exposures, is to serve as a portal for VA services and healthcare. So helping the team identify who's calling in and what's going on. I mean, certainly MVI will be very helpful for anyone who's already enrolled with the VA, but we're also expecting a sizable number of calls from veterans who are not. So I'd like to just put that on the table. And then also I see that Liz Hinkemeyer put a comment in the chat or a question in the chat. Can the incoming call be routed to a particular group based on veterans' location in the MVI before it is answered?
Yes, so there's a routing engine for, you can build rules for routing of calls for a variety of things. So one of the routing components might be something that they answered in the IVR, right? If your call is regarding ABC, press 1. If it's 2, right? So we can pick up things like that from the IVR. If you're using a bot, same thing. You know, it's determining intent and routing accordingly. There's also a skills component. So with each of your sort of agents, you can define their skills. And then there's skills-based routing. So there's rules-based routing and skills-based routing that we primarily lean on for that.
So that would be rules-based routing where, you know, if the area code or if the location is a certain zip code, there would be a rule for, you know, these zip codes go to these agents, these zip codes go to these agents, that sort of thing.
And the other element that works quite a bit as well is you might have agents that have the comparable skills, right, to answer these. And now what you do is instead of routing a call to a specific person, you route it to a queue. And then you have multiple agents and their coordinators in this case who are working the queue. And as it sits in the queue, you can have identifiers that sort of tag what the call is essentially related to, that could maybe pick off the queue. Now, that gets into business rules as well. Maybe you don't want that because now that one call that no one wants to take is sitting in the queue really long. Right? So this is all part of the planning and business rules, not the technical.
I understand. I think that would be a valuable option for us, though, because we will ultimately have different groups with different levels of expertise. So, you know, common questions can go to our less experienced group. More complicated questions could go to our more experienced group, that sort of thing.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, just moving on a little bit. So, you know, we have these different tabs again. These are, you know, all of these little sections on this form are configurable. And so patient encounters is meant to be sort of a timeline of all the things that have happened with this patient or contact. Maybe they're not always going to be a patient, they're going to be a contact. It's just a quick label change. And then we get into the fact that on this same sort of summary screen, we're surfacing some integrated data. Right, we're surfacing the EILR eligibility validation. So in other words, on the back end of the system, we're going out to EILR, we're calling that web service based on TED's information that's in this screen and coming back and sort of, you know, giving a notification here. It could be a green checkbox, however you want to do it, that they're eligible or not. Again, just trying to create a simple scenario, but you know, again, maybe complex on the back end for the integration. And then sort of same thing here on Vista, right? This is right in the user experience, surfacing details. If you remember, Brad sort of clicked through these different buttons here that did a change of, you know, the type of information we're pulling from Vista or CPRS or Cerner from the back end.
Can we go back to the EILR eligibility validation for a second?
Absolutely. Sure.
I'd like to clarify, are you saying that we could establish rules of deployments to X countries or whatever would make you eligible for a registry exam, and that it could verify deployment data in EILR to automatically confirm veteran eligibility for a registry exam?
So I think what we're essentially taking liberties here on illustrating is, I don't know, we don't know how complex that is, right? We don't know if it's really going to take one of your coordinators to go in and have to sort of manually piece some data together across a couple of different systems to determine that eligibility. We don't know. But if it's as simple as an API call into EILR and the API exists, we're making that API call on the back end, right? So if we jump down to, I'm pushing the wrong button here. My slide selector, right? If we jump down to here from from yesterday, right? We have the Dynamics application, but on the back end, it's able to speak with these different applications. So again, if it's as simple as a web services call to Eiler that is able to return and say yes or no to eligibility, then that would be what we're simulating here, right? We make the call, the response is yes, eligible. We paint it into the screen for the coordinator to just say yes, green checkbox or what have you, or some status that is presented back to them. Does that make sense?
Yes, and what I would comment on is that, so if the veteran is listed in Eiler,
yes,
their deployment history is there.
Yes.
There are basically rules-based criteria for registry exam eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
And those rules-based criteria are just purely based on deployments. Did you go to any of X countries during Y period of time?
Yep.
One feature that would be incredibly slick would be for it to read the deployment history from Eiler and tell us if it met those rules-based criteria.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's where we get into the requirements, right? So let's start from the ground up. Okay. We have integration into Eiler because there's a web service available to us. 2, we have the ability to call into that web service. We have the permission. We have that foundation there. 3, what data are we requesting, right? So if it's deployment dates and locations, do we have the ability to go in and get that? Does that web service allow for that? If so, okay, we go up another level. Are we going to just return all of them and maybe paint them to the screen and allow the coordinator to browse the information and make the decision? Or do we return it and within the logic of our application, build in the logic that essentially parses that information and just simply presents to the coordinator yes or no?
Yeah.
Right.
So something like that would be tremendously valuable if it gave a yes or no and then the option to manually review or confirm. The other thing that I would just point out is that Eiler includes veterans who are not enrolled with VA, so that might be a valuable source of information. Eiler is DoD based.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think you had originally sent an email out to your partner in that space, and they said something along the lines of there's not a web service, but there could be, I think is
Larry
that.
Vandergrift was the point of contact for Eiler. And so I think, I don't recollect his exact words, but I think that there was they had the option for APIs.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's there. I know VBMS is tied into that from an eligibility perspective. I know VBMS, we have many applications that integrate with VBMS today. If that's a means to get to the data we need, that's easier because we're not dependent now on the DoD to provide the information. But we have an application known as FCMT that is transitioning from DoD to VA system. So there is connections of data on both sides, not Eiler per se, but other applications.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to hijack the discussion here, but thank you.
This is not a pre-scripted scenario. This is much more open discussion. So great questions, and I'm glad you're asking. But while we're here, right, this again illustrates kind of the approach we would take is we would go from the application most likely through our VEIS layer, which is an existing API management layer in VA today that many people on this call are heavily involved with building and maintaining and supporting. And it essentially streamlines integrations into almost all of the back-end integrations that we have today essentially go through this sort of VEIS layer. And again, I know, like you said, your team today is technical, but maybe not to this particular level.
Oh,
But
no.
but what I think you want the takeaway to be here is that this is a paved road, right? When it comes to integration with systems, whether we have integrated with it or not, this component, VEIS, the broker of these integrations, it's its sole purpose in life is
Okay.
to streamline these integrations. So if the source that we're trying to get to is open to do so, right? It has an API, then adding in another application to VEIS is, very easy to do because that's why VEIS even exists. And so on this screen here, this is not a complete list, but here's just one application on the left-hand side. It's one of our contact center applications. It's in the National Call Center. That's a list of all of the line of business integrations, right? VA system integrations that it has just for that one particular application. And because it goes through this API layer, VEIS, we monitor it, we track it, we have all kinds of sort of visibility because it's complex stuff. Your systems talking to each other has gotten way easier over the years, but it's still something that you have to pay close attention to, and because it's a high point of failure for any application. Okay, so. And I guess that brings us to this graphic, which I had sent to you in email, right? I think what we would suggest that you do, because you're under a tight timeline, really figure out, maybe in a phased approach, what integrations would you need out of the gate in order to be operable? Which ones can be what we would refer to as swivel chair out of the gate? In other words, I'm here in Dynamics, and when I need to go search up that registry verification in Eiler, I open another browser and I do that in Eiler, right? And I make some sort of manual search, and I come back over and I do that. And so we're doing that a little bit, again, sort of swivel chair. And that may not be the optimal, but doing it that way for phase one might allow you to get your contact center up and going, right? So what you're really looking at sort of a no API integration option, a some API integration option, or an all API integration. My guess is you want to be at some, but I don't know if starting at no, or even just maybe one or two, is an option for you out of the gate.
What I think the information that we would need to prioritize would depend on the complexity of and time length of the build. In other words, like, are there some integrations that you can do in X amount of time while others take longer? So I mean, like, are all of the integrations equal in length of time and complexity, or are some easier than others? Because I think we would need that information in terms of ranking which API integrations would be the immediate priority and which ones we could swivel to over time.
Yeah. I'll open it up to my team if anybody has any comments on that. I mean, we have a lot of experience here on these types of rollouts. Scott, or
I think Brian,
go ahead.
I think Brian, what you said earlier is spot on. And when you went through the list of the questions we would ask about determination of eligibility, it's, the ones that the APIs exist for are quicker than if we have to wait for the API to be built. And then below that, even more, is if we've already got an integration built with that particular API, then that's obviously going to be much faster than creating an initial one. So it's really about working together to figure out what kind of data you want, where can we get it, where have we already gotten it, to answer those kind of questions. And then we can fill out that's really kind of a table almost, figure that out really relatively fast.
That would, because I would argue that we should prioritize the things that are quick and easy that we can get in there right away, and then the things that the interfaces that require an API to be built, we could then rank lower, but to try and make it as functional initially as it can be, and that's the technical information that we'd need from your end. And I don't know if it would be just a matter of like going through and listing all the options with a timeline for each one.
You know, the other thing that comes to mind too, right? If we're talking about service information from DoD, well, the historical data itself will not change, right? If it happened, it happened. If it didn't, it didn't. Now it will ongoing, right?
Right.
But if they were able to even give you an export of that data in some way, that could be put into a temporary database or holding database, I should say, on the VA side that, you know, goes from today back to the time span. There's another scenario that could streamline that, right? Because now you have complete control over the data source versus, to Rich's point, being dependent on someone else to build and create it for you.
Right. In terms of, I mean, what is our plan B? Our plan B is that we have, you know, if when we go live, if none of this has been built, our agents would have separate screens up for just the various programs, which would suck, but it's doable. We don't want to do that.
Sometimes timelines suck too, though.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is our plan B for whatever we, what we'd want is to have the integrations that we most commonly use implemented first, if they could be done so quickly. Aaron, please, I see your hands up.
Yeah, sure. Hey guys. So, hey, Dr. Moore. So have you heard of something called VIBE or Vibe with Eiler? Has anyone on the call heard about that?
No.
Oh, okay. So my understanding is that I think it's an Azure data lake.
Okay.
That hosts Eiler data as a share. And so whether there's an API or not, it might be an integration point to use Vibe in order to access the Eiler data. So that would be something to discuss further.
An API might be irrelevant if we can use Vibe. Is that what you're saying?
You can build an API that can leverage Vibe so that you're not calling like a database. You're essentially reading files that have been stored for this analysis if it has the information you're looking for.
That would be a possibility, yes.
Great.
And speaking of sort of data stored, Jack Bates, you know, obviously as our go-to CDW expert, is that data in CDW? Do you know? Is that another route to get to that?
Good question.
Not Eiler data. We actually tried for a long time to get the Eiler data in the VA, and you know we hit constant obstacles. So before I left, you know, we did not make it, but you know, I don't know what's happened, say, in the last year or so. Okay. But I do know some of the challenges with the Eiler data. So that's why I was curious, Aaron. We can talk about it, but you know, Vibe, I'd definitely be interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, my understanding it's a CXDW project. Maybe recently looked at. I'll send you a link on the information on that. But it looks like that's one of the ways that they say you can access Eiler data, in addition to JLV and the other one.
JLV is definitely an option. I was thinking about that, but yeah, I mean, that's great. If there was a lot of interest in Eiler data, but there were a lot of obstacles. So hopefully, you know, maybe some of those obstacles have been overcome.
Right. So if the Eiler application has an API in it, then fantastic, right? Like that's the smoothest path. But I'm just saying, like, you know, sort of the next step is if the data is available and there's a program running. And just so you know, when Brian showed that sort of, you know, eye chart related to VEIS, that was Azure Government, and that's exactly where the Vibe data is hosted as well. So when you have data locality close to each other, that's fantastic, you know, a great scenario to be able to access and to leverage those programs.
One other question, you mentioned CDW. Is there any what is the interface capability with CDW?
Yeah,
that should be no problem.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
you would have ready access to CDW data, which is principally, you know, VA Vista type data. There's actually a project going on that converges Vista data and Cerner data. It's called the Data Syndication Project.
Okay.
And, you know, that would you know, provide converged, you know, joint, you know, VA Cerner data as well.
Okay. I would like to add CDW to our list of possible programs. It wouldn't, for interfacing, it wouldn't be the top priority, but if it's not a problem to interface with CDW, that would be really valuable.
And Brian, keep me honest. I mean, I can speak from a CDW standpoint. You know, getting access to that is probably one of the easier things to do.
Yeah.
Now interfacing that with, you know, the app, maybe, you know, I don't know, but getting access to the data, definitely one of the easier interfaces.
Yeah, that would be put in definitely of the bucket of easy for multiple reasons. One, you know, the whole purpose of CDW is to make it accessible, right? That's exactly what it is. Secondly, it runs on all Microsoft technology, right? So when Jack built that over, you know, years and years, it's all based on Microsoft SQL Server and Azure, et cetera. So, so that we would put that in the easy category because we know it's accessible. It's built to be accessible. That's an easy one.
Then let's add it.
Okay. And then the question just becomes how much can we, you know, how much of the data do we need reside in there? Because that would be, you know, the easiest way to get to it, most likely. Okay. So I guess coming back to here, let me do a quick time check. So we're coming down. So I guess, you know, what I was going to go through here was, you know, just a little bit of that kind of configuration. We talked about how, you know, from this screen, you basically go into sort of drop and drag, right? So the reason we were able to do so much in just about a week's time is, again, it's a low code, no code. So when we edit the Dynamics application, it drops us down into Power Apps. We're dropping, dragging, configuring, and changing those fields within that same sort of, you know, experience. But and we've now already sort of talked through some of the integration elements. So I guess I would put the question back to you, Dr. Moore, and team. You know, what else can we do to sort of help you? I think, you know, if I were to summarize where we are, hopefully yesterday illustrated that, you know, we have the functionality within the platform. We can stand that up very quickly. We can make it, you know, rules based and things. We can add in the live chat. That's part of the product if we want that to be part of the original go live. You know, if we were talking no integrations, you know, I don't want to put any timelines on there, but, you know, that's the fastest option, right? And we've done that, you know, many times. The more integrations we add on, the more your timeline will essentially extend. And to the point of the team, the more we have already done those integrations, it extends less.
Understood. Team, so in terms of, you know, I've already expressed some of the things that I think would be helpful in terms of licensing costs for the omni-channel, which I think is an essential option. Really not an option, it's mandatory. Would the omni-channel also include, I think I saw the screen share option, because I could see that being valuable for our agents helping people with the online VERP questionnaire, the co-browser screen sharing. That I assume that would be included in the omni-channel as well.
Yeah, so the omni-channel capabilities are one license for all the channels. Where we will get into some issues there is twofold. One, most but not all of these are yet available in the government cloud. And two, even if they are available in the government cloud, the VA has maybe not enabled them, right? So we'd have to sort of take it piece by piece on that. I mean, right now, the VA as a whole, when it comes to these things, is kind of focused on live chat. We actually got very far down the path of implementing live chat for the national call centers. We were within 2 months of deployment, and the call center themselves pushed back and said, because of the labor shortages, we can't train right now. So we've at least sort of paved that path all the way up to the end. Some of the other ones would essentially be new ventures. But to your point, the capabilities there in the product, you just, again, you bring in potential other delays when it comes to getting it deployed in VA.
We're looking at a long-term project. So, you know, while on one hand, we want as much functionality up front as we can, recognize that to get it exactly what we want will take time and customization. And that's acceptable. We're talking about a major program going forward. I've done a lot of talking in terms of the VetHome response. VetHome team, please speak up if you have questions for Brian and the Dynamics team.
Is the video in the Omni channel, is that like a, you know, a video visit with somebody potentially if VVC was down or VVC was overwhelmed?
Yeah, so the way that video works is you can start a live chat with someone like we did in the demo with the veteran Abby, and you, within a single click, if it's enabled, the agent can say, hey, would you mind if we convert this to a video call? Because I want to be able to see this or that. And you can, we call it escalation. So we escalate from a live chat to a voice and video call, and it stays over voice over IP. So it doesn't become a phone call. It stays voice over IP directly within the chat experience. So while, yes, it's a very easy, streamlined way to get into video, and we've done demonstrations for VHA before where, you know, oh, I'm having pain in my eye. Yeah, let's go to video and I can show it to you. That is absolutely a feasible way to leverage that technology.
Hey, Brian, did you want to mention co-browse as well? Again, some of the registry stuff?
Yeah, so and they brought it up previously as well. I just don't, Brad, unless you know, I don't know where co-browse stands from a government cloud perspective. Do we have it in government cloud today?
I don't think so, but I'm fairly certain we could probably get it. But let me check and see if I can find that out. I don't know if I'll get that before the end of the call, but I'll try to see.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, these are things you know that are part of the platform that you can grow into, right? Because you're talking about long term. So we have these things already there waiting for you. You might have to pioneer the enablement of it at VA if no one else is using it yet. But they're part of the platform.
I would think IT folks would be using some sort of screen sharing, you know, but understood that we might be growing into some of these capabilities.
Yep. Absolutely. So one little cool thing, just maybe to end on a neat note. So we've talked about Power Apps and what that is. And the interesting thing about Power Apps, specifically those Canvas apps that we talked about, you know, every user in the VA has actually access to Power Apps. So again, going back to the gratitude example, right? That was built with Power Apps. And if you were to go anywhere in your sort of intranet on your GFE, right, here's just one page, the SharePoint page within, and you click that little sort of waffle, or you go directly to the link, you see all those Office options there, but you also see an option right there for Power Apps. And when you choose that, it'll basically say, okay, where do you want your data to live? Do you want it to live in SharePoint? Do you want it to live in SQL? Do you want it to live in Dataverse? Right. So you're now walking through that sort of process. Do you want to build a Canvas app? Do you want to build a model-driven app? And these things called portals as well, which are external facing to VA, which there's many of those as well built on the Power Platform. And once they select and get started, they're right into their drop and drag application building experience. And so, like I said, you as a VA employee can do this right now by just essentially, you know, navigating there. Where you can't go is beyond into those sort of premium connectors, and of course, ultimately up into Dynamics 365 without that sort of additional acquisition and then license assignment to you. But you know, nonetheless, sometimes it's really interesting context to understand that how kind of diverse the platform is for doing everything from sort of small, lightweight utilities that may help you in your coordination center, right? Hey, we just need a quick little app for tracking this new, you know, new function that we want to have. Hey, can someone build a Power App in this tomorrow morning and we'll be off and running? I mean, many of these apps across the VA are things like COVID tracking and bed tracking and sort of quick, you know, little utilities and tools that are needed. And that's exactly what Power Apps is at the lowest level. And so you can really think of kind of this as, you know, it's a single platform that gives you these tools that expand everything from just expanding office capabilities to sort of medium-sized departmental applications to enterprise applications, whether they're contact centers or, you know, large transaction systems like we have in something like TMP, for example, or point solutions. If you know, Power BI doing reporting and business intelligence, having external facing customer portals, you know, that we demoed yesterday, virtual agent bots, which we demoed yesterday, and even using things like RPA, you know, building little automated processes on the desktop. And so just thought I'd give you that sort of context and help maybe with some of the terminology that we're using. And, you know, the exciting part, especially for us, is that as far as the industry analysis goes as to these low code, no code platforms, you know, both by Gartner and Forrester, Microsoft is the recognized, you know, leader in these platforms. And frankly, in federal, we're the top because these other two that hang around the top, Mendix and OutSystems, they don't even have a federal presence. So, so we're sort of proud of that. It's for guys like me that have been here at Microsoft for over a decade. This is one of the more exciting times because some of the amazing things that these low code, no code technologies can do are just kind of mind blowing, honestly.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
So to tie this back to what Brad presented yesterday. So Dr. Moore, when Brad showed you the physician screen, basically those, as Brian said, the Power Apps are looking for a data source. So you have that low code ability. So outside of the model driven app where an agent would use and your team, you could build these ancillary apps that just use your same dataverse as its data source. And so you have the ability then to have these satellite apps that have utility function, but it's not like putting somebody into your call center.
Exactly. And that's actually this slide right here. You're exactly right, Steve. When we built the demonstration, you know, we sort of had this patient record experience right within the CRM, but we built that as a Power App, which can then be popped out and run totally standalone for anyone that needs this same sort of utility function, but not actually going directly in and managing the full CRM. So great point, and that's exactly why we did it. Does that make sense, Dr. Moore?
Hi, Brian. Dr. Moore had to drop off for another
okay.
meeting. But yes, definitely thank you for the presentation today. And the group is going to debrief, and then we'll definitely be in contact with you all.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the time and the extra couple of minutes. Everybody have a great Friday, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.